The first tension. Gerald Harrison strode through the narrow, dimly lit hallway of the aging building he managed, his polished shoes clicking against the worn floor. He was a man who held his head high, not from pride in his property, but rather from a sense of superiority over those who called it home. Gerald wasn't interested in the lives of the tenants, who came from diverse backgrounds and held humble ambitions. To him, they were simply dollar signs, placeholders in his investment portfolio. And the Johnson family was no exception. The Johnsons, Marcus, Lisa, and their two children, Malcolm and Jasmine, had been living in apartment 3B for almost a year. Their family was close-knit, thriving on shared resilience and respect. Marcus Johnson, a self-made entrepreneur in his mid-40s, had built a small tech company from the ground up, pouring countless hours into creating a stable life for his family. His wife, Lisa, was a civil rights lawyer whose work had earned her the community's respect. They were passionate about providing their children with a safe home and instilling in them values of integrity, strength, and compassion. Despite the comfort they found in each other, the building they lived in wasn't exactly luxurious. Pipes groaned whenever they ran hot water, and the paint on the walls peeled like old wallpaper. Yet it was home, a sanctuary amid the hustle and bustle of the city, and the Johnsons treated it with care. Marcus had fixed the cabinet doors, Lisa had added cozy touches to each room, and they always kept their space clean and welcoming. Gerald, however, looked down on them and their neighbors, quietly resenting the changing face of the neighborhood. The area was becoming an attractive spot for investors, and he saw only an opportunity to profit. But to make the most of that opportunity, Gerald needed the building's current occupants to leave. He was a man of twisted ambition, and he had no qualms about how he achieved his goals. The tension between Gerald and the Johnsons had been simmering ever since they'd moved in. At first, it was the passive-aggressive notes he'd leave on the tenants' doors, reminders to respect the property or keep noise to a minimum. It didn't matter that the Johnsons were always courteous neighbors. Gerald saw them as a threat, a family that didn't fit his vision for the building's future. One cold morning, Marcus was drinking his coffee and reading the news when he noticed an envelope slid under the door. It was a letter from Gerald. Frowning, he opened it and quickly scanned the contents. His eyes widened in disbelief as he read the words. Starting next month, your rent will increase by 50%. He knew immediately what this was, an eviction tactic. There was no way they, or anyone in the building, could afford such an increase. Marcus took a slow, steadying breath before calling out to Lisa, who was working at the small desk they'd set up in the corner of the living room. Lisa, you need to see this. Lisa's face hardened as she read the letter, her eyes flashing with a mix of anger and determination. He's trying to push us out, Marcus. This is exactly the kind of tactic I've fought against in court. She tapped the paper with a firm finger, and her voice took on a steely edge. He knows this increase is unaffordable for anyone here. It's unethical and borderline illegal. Can we fight it? Marcus asked, his own resolve hardening as he looked into his wife's fierce gaze. We will fight it, Lisa replied, her voice resolute. I'll look into the laws regarding rent increases and file a complaint if necessary. But Marcus... She paused, her expression softening slightly as she reached for his hand. I need you to be ready for a long battle. This might get messy. The struggle for justice. The weeks after Gerald's rent hike letter were a whirlwind for the Johnsons. Lisa threw herself into researching rent control laws, tenant rights, and every possible defense they could use against the increase. She spent late nights at her desk, hunched over her laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she prepared a case to defend their right to stay. For Lisa, it wasn't just a legal battle. It was personal. She had spent her career fighting for the rights of others, and now it was her family in the crosshairs. Marcus, too, began to feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. He had always been a provider, the one who ensured his family was safe and comfortable. The thought of losing their home to a greedy landlord who couldn't see past his own prejudice gnawed at him. He resolved to keep the spirits of his family up, organizing movie nights and taking the kids on outings to keep a sense of normalcy in their lives. One rainy evening, as the family sat together for dinner, Malcolm, their 14-year-old son, looked up from his plate, his brow furrowed. "Mom, Dad," he began hesitantly, "are we going to have to leave? Are we going to lose our home?" Marcus reached across the table, squeezing his son's shoulder reassuringly. "We're doing everything we can, Malcolm. Your mom's fighting hard for us. We're not giving up that easily." Lisa smiled at her son, a look of fierce determination on her face. "We're staying here, sweetheart. I'm working on it. But remember, sometimes standing up for what's right takes time and courage. We're going to show Mr. Harrison that we won't be pushed around." That night, after the kids had gone to bed, Marcus and Lisa sat together in the quiet living room, watching the rain tap against the windows. The uncertainty weighed heavily on them both, but neither voiced their fears. Instead, Marcus reached out, holding Lisa's hand. "We're going to get through this," he said softly. "We always do." The building's growing tensions. Meanwhile, Gerald was becoming increasingly frustrated. The Johnsons weren't budging, and neither were several other tenants he had tried to push out with similar tactics. His efforts to intimidate them only seemed to harden their resolve. Determined to get the upper hand, he began to cut corners in building maintenance, hoping the worsening conditions would drive the residents out on their own. Soon, the impact of his negligence became evident. The plumbing began to falter, resulting in leaky faucets and low water pressure. The hallway lights flickered constantly, casting eerie shadows across the corridors. The heating system broke down repeatedly, leaving the tenants shivering through cold nights. The building was deteriorating rapidly, but Gerald didn't care. He saw it as a necessary sacrifice to force the tenants out. Marcus, however, was not one to stay silent in the face of injustice. He took it upon himself to organize a tenants' meeting, inviting everyone in the building to discuss what they could do collectively. The tenants gathered in the cramped lobby, many of them bundled in coats to stave off the cold that had seeped into their apartments. "Gerald's trying to push us out," Marcus began, his voice firm. "But if we stand together, we can fight back. We have rights as tenants, and he's violating them. My wife, Lisa, is a lawyer, and she's been gathering information on what we can do legally." The tenants murmured in agreement, their faces a mixture of fear and determination. Many of them were families, immigrants, or elderly individuals who couldn't afford to simply pack up and move. This building was their home, and they weren't about to give it up without a fight. An elderly woman named Mrs. Alvarez raised her hand, her voice trembling as she spoke. "I've lived here for over 30 years, she said. "This is the only home I know. I can't afford to move somewhere else. We have to fight him. We can't let him bully us like this." The meeting ended with a renewed sense of unity among the tenants. Marcus and Lisa spent the following days compiling evidence of the worsening conditions in the building, taking photos and gathering testimonies from the other residents. Lisa prepared to file a formal complaint with the city, hoping that the authorities would investigate Gerald's negligence. A last-minute threat. One afternoon, as Marcus was heading out for work, he found another letter taped to their door. His heart sank as he recognized Gerald's handwriting on the envelope. He ripped it open, and his hands clenched as he read the contents. Gerald had issued them an official eviction notice, stating that they had 30 days to vacate the apartment due to violations of the lease agreement. It was a blatant lie, but Marcus knew Gerald was growing desperate. When Lisa saw the letter, her face hardened with anger. "He's trying to scare us out," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "But we're not going anywhere." The Johnsons' resolve was stronger than ever, but the stress was taking its toll. Lisa spent sleepless nights combing through legal documents, determined to find a loophole that would protect their family. Marcus continued to rally the other tenants, reminding them of their collective power and encouraging them to stand firm. Little did they know, Gerald's desperation had led him to dangerous allies. He had become entangled with an extremist group that shared his disdain for the changing demographics of the neighborhood. Together, they devised a plan to rid the building of its undesirable residents once and for all. The situation was growing more volatile by the day, and the Johnsons sensed that something was coming. They knew Gerald wouldn't stop until he had forced them out, but they were prepared to fight for their home, their family, and their dignity. In the face of adversity, their courage only grew stronger, rising from the ashes. As the days passed, the Johnsons found themselves living in a near-constant state of vigilance. With each passing hour, it seemed that Gerald's tactics grew more ruthless. Lisa was spending long hours preparing her legal case against him, digging through tenant law and amassing evidence. Marcus, meanwhile, continued organizing the tenants and documenting every instance of neglect in the building. It was becoming clear to everyone in the building that Gerald would stop at nothing to force them out. One evening, as the tenants gathered in the chilly basement for a meeting, the atmosphere was heavy with frustration and fear. Mrs. Alvarez, who had lived in the building the longest, voiced what many were feeling. "He won't stop, you know," she murmured, her voice barely audible. "He's done everything he can to make this place unlivable. Now he's saying we broke some rule, giving us all these fake eviction notices. How long can we keep fighting?" Marcus, sensing the weariness in her voice, placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "I know it feels like he's got all the power, but we have something he doesn't," he said, looking around at the faces of his neighbors. "We have each other. Together, we're stronger than he knows." Across the room, Lisa nodded, a determined look on her face. "The law is on our side," she added. "I've filed complaints with the city, and they've started investigating. Gerald can't keep hiding behind intimidation tactics forever." An unexpected offer. The next day, just as Lisa was preparing to submit another round of complaints, her phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. She hesitated, then answered, her tone wary. "Is this Lisa Johnson?" a deep voice asked on the other end. "Yes, this is she." "Who's calling?" "My name is David Carmichael. I'm a property developer, and I heard about the situation with your building," the man said, his voice calm and professional. "I'm interested in discussing an arrangement that could benefit both of us." Lisa's interest was piqued, but she was also cautious. "What kind of arrangement?" she asked, her voice tinged with skepticism. "I understand that your landlord, Mr. Harrison, is in quite a bit of financial trouble. He's taken out several loans to finance his attempts at redevelopment, but his finances are stretched thin," David explained. "I'd like to meet with you and your husband to discuss a potential offer. I believe there's a way we can secure the building and ensure that it remains in the hands of those who value it." Later that evening, after putting the kids to bed, Lisa shared the conversation with Marcus. They were both cautious. After everything Gerald had put them through, the idea of working with another property developer was unnerving. But they couldn't deny the opportunity that had presented itself. "I don't know," Marcus murmured, a frown etched across his face. "This sounds almost too good to be true." "I feel the same," Lisa admitted. "But what if this is our chance to take back control? We could secure a future for us, and for the other tenants." After discussing it further, they agreed to meet David the following day. A hopeful meeting. The next afternoon, Marcus and Lisa met David Carmichael in a cozy local coffee shop. David was a tall, unassuming man in his late 50s, with kind eyes and a warm smile that immediately put them at ease. "Thank you for meeting with me," he began, extending a hand to each of them. "I won't take up too much of your time, but I wanted to discuss a proposal that could turn this situation around." They listened intently as David laid out his plan. He had been tracking Gerald's property dealings for some time and was aware of his financial instability. It turned out that Gerald's attempts to push out the tenants were partially motivated by his urgent need to pay off a series of high-interest loans. David explained that Gerald was in such dire straits, he was likely to sell the property if the right offer came along. "Here's my proposal," David said, leaning in. "I can help you and the other tenants buy the building from Gerald. I'll provide the initial financing to make the purchase, and you can pay me back over time. I'm not looking to turn a huge profit. I just want to help save this building and keep people like Gerald from destroying neighborhoods." Lisa's mind raced as she processed his words. The idea of buying the building seemed impossible just days before, but with David's offer, it was suddenly within reach. She glanced at Marcus, whose eyes were shining with cautious hope. "But why?" Marcus asked, studying David's face carefully. "Why are you willing to help us like this?" David's expression softened. "I grew up in a building just like yours," he explained. "I know what it's like to have someone try to take your home away. I made a promise to myself that once I had the means, I'd use my resources to help others stay in their homes. It's about giving back to the community that made me who I am." Lisa felt a swell of gratitude as she looked at this stranger who had unexpectedly become their ally. "We'll need to discuss this with the other tenants, but if they're on board, I think we can make this work," she said, her voice thick with emotion. An offer too tempting to refuse. Over the next few days, Marcus and Lisa shared David's proposal with the other tenants. While some were initially skeptical, they gradually warmed up to the idea of owning their homes. For many of them, it was a dream they had never dared to imagine. As they gathered signatures and support, the mood in the building shifted. Where there had once been fear and resentment, there was now a spark of hope and unity. The tenants began to work together to clean and repair their shared spaces, preparing to take ownership of the building they called home. Finally, after several weeks of planning and coordination, David arranged a meeting with Gerald to present the offer. Lisa and Marcus joined him, sitting across the table from the landlord who had caused them so much grief. Gerald's face twisted with anger and disbelief as he read through the offer. "You think you can buy this place out from under me?" he sneered, his eyes flashing with resentment. "I'd rather let it rot." "Think it over," David replied calmly, unfazed by Gerald's hostility. "You're in a tight spot, and this is the best offer you're going to get." Gerald's face went pale as he realized the truth in David's words. He had pushed the tenants to the brink, only to find himself cornered. Begrudgingly, he agreed to the sale. An unlikely triumph. The following month, the tenants received the news they had been waiting for. The building was theirs. Together, they had pooled their resources and, with David's support, secured ownership. It was a victory they had never thought possible, a testament to the power of unity and resilience. On a bright Saturday morning, the tenants gathered in the courtyard to celebrate. Marcus and Lisa watched their neighbors laugh and mingle, their faces alight with joy and relief. The building was no longer just a place to live. It was a symbol of hope and community. As they looked around, Lisa leaned into Marcus, a smile spreading across her face. "We did it," she whispered, her voice full of pride. Marcus nodded, his eyes misty with emotion. "We did more than that," he replied. "We built something no one can take away." And so, the Johnsons and their neighbors took ownership of their future, bound together by the trials they had faced and the strength they had discovered within themselves. The building had become more than just four walls. It was a testament to their resilience and the power of community. Building a new community. The day the ownership papers were signed, a profound transformation swept over the building. The tenants were now more than mere residents. They were co-owners with a shared vision for their future. The once flickering lights, broken heaters, and leaky faucets no longer symbolized neglect, but a community project waiting to be tackled together. The Johnsons and their neighbors felt a collective pride as they looked around, envisioning what their home could become with a little work and a lot of heart. Lisa took charge of organizing a tenant council, assembling a small group to handle building upkeep, finances, and community events. Marcus volunteered to lead the maintenance team, rallying a few other tenants with DIY skills to tackle the repairs that Gerald had long ignored. Over the following weeks, they set up workdays where each resident contributed, some offering physical labor, others donating supplies, and a few simply providing refreshments and encouragement. The building buzzed with activity. Marcus spent weekends fixing leaky pipes, repainting hallways, and installing brighter, energy-efficient lights. Lisa drafted up community guidelines to keep everyone informed and engaged, and she connected with local community organizations to secure donations for additional resources. One Saturday morning, as Marcus tightened the last bolt on a new kitchen sink he had just installed for Mrs. Alvarez, he stood back, admiring their work. The elderly woman, who had spent over 3 decades in the building, gave him a grateful smile. "This is what home should feel like," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "It's what it will always feel like from now on, Mrs. Alvarez," Marcus replied with a grin. "This is just the beginning." The birth of a community hub. As the repairs progressed, the tenants felt an undeniable sense of renewal. No longer just neighbors, they began to form deep, supportive bonds, leaning on one another through challenges and sharing in their victories. Inspired by their newfound unity, they converted the old, unused basement space into a community room where residents could gather for meetings, movie nights, and holiday celebrations. Jasmine, Marcus and Lisa's teenage daughter, took an interest in decorating the community room. Alongside her brother Malcolm, she organized a group of kids and teens to paint murals on the walls, turning them into vibrant displays of color and imagination. The murals depicted scenes of hope, resilience, and togetherness, each brushstroke a reminder of the community's journey and triumph. Lisa, who had worked as a civil rights lawyer for years, saw an opportunity to extend their impact beyond the building's walls. With the tenant council's support, she started organizing monthly Know Your Rights workshops in the community room, inviting local experts to speak about housing rights, financial literacy, and health resources. People from the neighborhood began attending the workshops, and soon the building became a small but powerful hub of knowledge and support for the wider community. One evening after a particularly successful workshop, Lisa looked around the packed room, her heart swelling with pride. People were chatting, laughing, and connecting in ways that hadn't been possible before. The building, once a place of isolation and neglect, had blossomed into a vibrant center of unity. "Never thought I'd see this place come alive like this," Marcus said, joining her by the doorway as he watched their neighbors enjoy the space. "It's more than just walls and floors now. It's a legacy." Lisa smiled, slipping her hand into his. "We're creating something that will last, Marcus. This is what true change looks like. Resistance and resilience." While the transformation of the building brought joy to the residents, their journey wasn't without challenges. Gerald, humiliated by his failed attempts to evict the tenants, wasn't ready to let go completely. He had taken his loss bitterly, and in an attempt to undermine their efforts, he began spreading rumors in the neighborhood, casting the tenants as undesirable influences. At first, the residents tried to ignore the whispers and sideways glances, but one day they awoke to find their building vandalized, with hateful graffiti sprayed across the walls of their newly refurbished lobby. It was a chilling reminder that not everyone celebrated their success. Lisa and Marcus gathered the tenants that same evening, their faces somber yet determined. They knew that Gerald had likely been behind the incident, but they were unwilling to stoop to his level. Instead, they rallied together to repaint the lobby walls, covering the hateful messages with new positive murals that reflected their strength and unity. "We will not be intimidated," Marcus declared as he rolled a fresh coat of paint over the last of the graffiti. "We've built something beautiful here, and no one can take that away from us." The incident only strengthened their resolve. Lisa reached out to her network, arranging for the local press to cover their story. Within days, a journalist from a major news outlet visited the building, interviewing the residents and capturing the journey they had taken from victims of a ruthless landlord to owners of a flourishing community. The story went viral, spreading across social media and shining a light on the resilience of the Johnsons and their neighbors. Donations began pouring in from people inspired by their journey, and community organizations offered their support. What had started as an act of defiance against one man's greed had transformed into a beacon of hope for many facing similar struggles. a vision for the future. With newfound support, the residents embarked on even more ambitious projects. Marcus, ever the entrepreneur, proposed the idea of turning the building into a green, sustainable residence. Using donations and local grants, they installed solar panels on the roof and set up a small rooftop garden where tenants could grow fresh vegetables and herbs. The rooftop garden soon became a beloved spot, a tranquil retreat where residents could unwind and connect with nature. Jasmine and Malcolm started an after-school tutoring program in the community room, helping younger children with their studies and organizing art and music sessions. What had once been a rundown building was now a center of learning, laughter, and support, a place where the community's children could grow up feeling valued and empowered. One afternoon, as Marcus looked out over the bustling rooftop garden, he found himself reflecting on the journey they had taken. Just months ago, they had been on the brink of eviction, their future uncertain. Now, they stood as pillars of strength, leaders in a community they had built from the ground up. When Lisa joined him, she rested her head on his shoulder, sharing the quiet joy of the moment. "We've created something extraordinary, Marcus," she whispered. "And it all started with a struggle." "It did," he agreed, wrapping an arm around her. "But that struggle brought us here, to this moment. We turned adversity into something beautiful." As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the building, Marcus and Lisa watched their neighbors gathered in the garden below, laughing and talking together as the smell of freshly planted herbs filled the air. They had not only secured their home, they had built a community, one rooted in resilience, unity, and an unwavering belief in the power of hope. This building, once a site of hardship, had become a symbol of triumph, a testament to the strength found in community, family, and the courage to stand up against all odds. A community transformed. The community the Johnsons and their neighbors had built from scratch was no longer just a building. It was a thriving ecosystem of support, creativity, and shared purpose. Each resident had contributed something unique to the space, from the rooftop garden, where Jasmine and Malcolm now taught children about sustainable farming, to the basement community room, where Lisa's workshops drew people from the entire neighborhood. Despite the setbacks, the community had become more than the sum of its parts. What once stood as an aging, neglected building had transformed into a beacon of resilience, a place where people felt safe and valued. This transformation, however, had caught the attention of more than just their immediate community. One crisp fall afternoon, a well-dressed woman knocked on Marcus and Lisa's door. She introduced herself as Sarah Jenkins, a city council representative who had read about their story and was deeply moved by their journey. "I have to say, what you and the other tenants have accomplished here is nothing short of extraordinary," Sarah said as she sat in their living room, looking around at the cozy space Lisa had lovingly decorated with family photos and inspirational quotes. "I wanted to come here personally and discuss a proposal that I believe could benefit not only this building but the entire community." Lisa and Marcus exchanged intrigued glances. "What did you have in mind?" Lisa asked, leaning forward. "I'd like to help expand your initiatives on a larger scale," Sarah explained. "With your permission, we could work together to make this building a model for other neighborhoods facing similar challenges. I believe the resilience and unity you've built here could inspire others to take control of their housing situations, to empower communities instead of pushing them out." Her words ignited a new vision in Marcus and Lisa's minds. The building had given their family and neighbors a second chance, but this proposal offered the chance to give others the tools to reclaim their homes and their communities. They discussed the idea with Sarah at length, brainstorming potential programs, community outreach, and ways they could help educate people in similar situations. The tenant council was thrilled when Lisa and Marcus brought the proposal to their next meeting. Together, they crafted a mission statement for what they were now calling the Unity Initiative. Their goal was to create a model for urban neighborhoods where tenants could collaborate to improve their living conditions, develop educational resources, and build sustainable practices. The Unity Initiative became a rallying point, not just for their building but for the surrounding community. News of the program spread, and soon, families, young professionals, and community advocates were reaching out, eager to learn and contribute. Marcus and Lisa were invited to speak at local events and conferences, sharing their story and outlining practical steps that others could follow to create similar changes. Challenges and growing pains. With the spotlight on the Unity Initiative, the tenants were busier than ever, balancing their daily responsibilities with their newfound mission. But with the increased attention came new challenges. Not everyone welcomed the changes, and some feared that the initiative's success might draw in developers with interests contrary to the community's. One evening, after a particularly heated tenant council meeting, Marcus found himself staring out at the city from the rooftop garden, lost in thought. The moon cast a silver glow over the plants, each leaf a small victory, a testament to their hard work. Lisa joined him, sensing his worry. "You're worried about the attention, aren't you?" she asked, slipping her hand into his. Marcus nodded, letting out a sigh. "It's just, I want this to work, but I don't want it to attract the wrong kind of attention. We've built something real here, something honest. I don't want that to change because of outside pressure." Lisa smiled, understanding his concern. "Change can be daunting, Marcus, but remember why we started this. It was about protecting our home and giving people a voice. The more people see what we're doing, the more we can inspire others to protect their own communities. And that's worth the risks, isn't it?" Marcus squeezed her hand, reassured by her words. "You're right," he murmured. "We didn't get this far by playing it safe. We got here by standing up for what we believe in." Together, they decided to double down on their efforts, creating a framework for the Unity Initiative that prioritized community values and set clear guidelines on preserving the integrity of their mission. They reached out to local activists and community leaders, inviting them to join as advisors to ensure the initiative stayed grounded and aligned with their original vision. A growing movement. Within a few months, the Unity Initiative had grown into a citywide movement. Inspired by the Johnsons and their neighbors, other tenant councils began forming in buildings across the city. The tenants shared tips, organized workshops, and coordinated events, working together to resist predatory landlords and reclaim their neighborhoods. The initiative had a ripple effect on local government policies as well. City council members began proposing new tenant protection laws, inspired by the principles of the Unity Initiative. The city introduced grants for sustainable housing projects, prioritizing neighborhoods historically overlooked by developers. The Johnsons' building became a symbol of the movement, frequently visited by community organizers, journalists, and students eager to learn from their success. Lisa's workshops became popular events, with standing-room-only attendance. She covered topics ranging from tenant rights to environmental sustainability, encouraging people to take ownership of their futures. As the initiative spread, Marcus and Lisa realized they had created something far greater than they'd ever imagined. They had built a legacy not only for their children, but for families across the city. The Unity Initiative had transformed their building into a symbol of hope and resilience, and they were determined to keep pushing forward. An unlikely redemption. Meanwhile, Gerald Harrison, the man who had once sought to drive the Johnsons out, watched the movement unfold with a mixture of bitterness and grudging respect. His plans to redevelop the building had failed, and he had lost not only the property but his reputation in the process. Now he watched as his former tenants flourished, creating something beautiful out of the place he had neglected. One evening, as he sat alone in his apartment, nursing a glass of whiskey, Gerald saw a news report about the Unity Initiative on his television. He recognized Marcus and Lisa, speaking passionately about the importance of community, unity, and resilience. They looked confident, fulfilled. Everything he had once sneered at, yet now felt strangely drawn to. The next morning, Gerald made an unannounced visit to the building. When Marcus spotted him standing awkwardly in the lobby, he felt a surge of anger and mistrust. Yet there was something in Gerald's expression that made him pause. "I came to apologize," Gerald began, his voice gruff. "I was wrong, and I see that now. You've built something here that I didn't have the vision to see. I wanted to say that I admire what you've done." Marcus studied him carefully, sensing a hint of genuine remorse. Gerald had caused them pain, no doubt, but Marcus had learned that true strength sometimes lay in forgiveness. Extending a hand, he replied, "Thank you, Gerald. I hope you find your own way to make things right." To everyone's surprise, Gerald stayed in touch with the community, volunteering his skills in property management to help improve other neglected buildings in the city. He became an unlikely ally, and though some tenants remained wary of him, he gradually earned their respect through his efforts. A lasting legacy. As the Unity Initiative entered its second year, the Johnsons and their neighbors took a moment to reflect on their journey. They had turned hardship into hope, despair into empowerment, and a simple building into a thriving community. On a sunny afternoon, Marcus and Lisa stood together on the rooftop garden, surrounded by their neighbors and friends. Together, they unveiled a plaque mounted near the entrance, dedicating the building to the residents who had fought tirelessly to save it. The plaque read, "In honor of those who stood united, built a community, and inspired a city. May this place always be a home of hope, strength, and unity." The crowd erupted in applause, and tears filled Lisa's eyes as she looked out at the faces of the people who would become her family. She and Marcus had come so far, not just for themselves, but for everyone who had called the building home. As the celebration continued, Marcus whispered to Lisa, "We did it. We really did it." Lisa nodded, her heart full of pride and gratitude. "Yes, we did. And now we have a legacy worth sharing with the world." The legacy of unity. Years passed, and the Unity Initiative grew beyond anything Marcus, Lisa, and their neighbors could have imagined. What began as a grassroots movement to save their own building had spread, reaching neighborhoods and cities across the country. The once dilapidated building had not only become a model of tenant empowerment, but a symbol of hope for communities facing similar challenges. The Johnsons' building was no longer just a residence. It was a beacon of resilience, a hub where people came to learn, share, and grow. Marcus and Lisa now found themselves at the center of a thriving network of advocates, activists, and community organizers, all inspired by their journey. Their story was featured in national publications and even became the subject of a documentary that drew widespread attention. The Johnsons' building, with its rooftop garden and vibrant community room, became a pilgrimage site for those passionate about housing reform and community empowerment. As the years unfolded, the Johnsons continued to pour their energy into the initiative. They worked alongside city officials, advising on policy changes that protected tenant rights and promoted sustainable, community-focused housing. Lisa's workshops grew into a formal curriculum, Unity in Action, which was adopted by community centers and schools. She had become a sought-after speaker, sharing practical strategies for tenant empowerment and legal rights, and she often traveled to low-income neighborhoods, advocating for housing rights and teaching people how to reclaim their spaces. Passing the torch. One cool autumn afternoon, Marcus and Lisa were walking through the neighborhood hand in hand, marveling at how far they had come. The streets were alive with the sounds of children playing, neighbors chatting, and families enjoying the fresh air. The entire neighborhood had transformed alongside the building, becoming a safe and welcoming place for all who lived there. The Unity Initiative had brought new life to the area, attracting small businesses, community art projects, and even a local farmers market that operated each weekend. As they walked, Malcolm, now a young man attending college nearby, joined them. He had grown up watching his parents fight for justice, and their example had inspired him to study urban development with a focus on sustainable housing. "Mom, Dad," Malcolm began, his voice full of quiet determination, "I think it's time I took on a more active role with the Unity Initiative. I've learned so much from watching you both, and I want to contribute in my own way." Marcus beamed with pride, clapping a hand on his son's shoulder. "We couldn't be prouder, Malcolm. This has always been a family effort, and the future of the initiative needs fresh ideas and perspectives." Lisa nodded, her eyes misty. "You have no idea how much it means to us to see you so passionate about this. We built a foundation, but it's time for the next generation to carry it forward." Over the next few months, Malcolm immersed himself in the work, joining the tenant council meetings and taking on leadership roles within the community. With his knowledge of urban development, he brought new ideas to the table, proposing projects like affordable co-op housing models and renewable energy initiatives that could be applied across the city. His dedication and innovative thinking energized the community, and it wasn't long before other young residents began to get involved as well, inspired by Malcolm's commitment. An enduring community hub. The community room in the Johnsons' building had always been a special place, a sanctuary where people gathered to celebrate, learn, and support one another. Over time, the room took on even more significance, becoming a space where the Unity Initiative's impact was visible to all. Lisa's Unity in Action curriculum continued to grow, and she began training other tenant leaders, empowering them to lead workshops in their own neighborhoods. One evening, Lisa hosted a graduation ceremony for her first group of graduates, tenants from across the city who had completed the Unity in Action program and were now ready to lead their communities. The room was filled with friends, family, and local officials who had come to celebrate the new leaders' accomplishments. As Lisa looked around the room, seeing the pride on each graduate's face, she felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. "These aren't just graduates," she said as she addressed the crowd, her voice carrying the strength of years of dedication. "These are the next generation of changemakers, the people who will carry our mission forward. This movement is bigger than any one of us, and together, we are unstoppable." As the crowd erupted in applause, Marcus caught Lisa's eye and gave her a proud nod. Together, they had built something that would last far beyond their own lifetimes. A national movement. Over the next decade, the Unity Initiative's influence spread across the country. Communities in cities large and small began forming tenant councils, inspired by the Johnsons' model. Local governments took notice, implementing policy changes to protect renters and create pathways to homeownership for low-income families. Marcus and Lisa were often invited to speak at national conferences and forums on affordable housing, sharing their experiences and best practices. The Johnsons' building was recognized as a historic site, its legacy celebrated as an example of what could be achieved through unity and resilience. The plaque they had installed at the entrance years before now gleamed proudly for all who entered. In honor of those who stood united, built a community, and inspired a nation. May this place always be a home of hope, strength, and unity. Marcus and Lisa took great pride in seeing their work bear fruit on a national scale. But it was the small, everyday moments, seeing neighbors greet each other warmly, children running through the halls, or residents gathering in the community room, that filled their hearts with the most joy. Their building had become a place where people could thrive, safe in the knowledge that they had a community that cared deeply for them. A new chapter. As Lisa and Marcus grew older, they began to reflect on their journey, considering what legacy they wanted to leave for future generations. They had transformed not only their own lives, but the lives of countless others. And as they looked at Malcolm, who was now taking the reins, they knew their work would continue long after they were gone. One evening, the Johnson family gathered on the rooftop garden, surrounded by friends and neighbors. The garden, once a modest project, had grown into a lush haven filled with vegetables, flowers, and benches where residents could relax. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the city, and the air buzzed with laughter and conversation. Malcolm raised a glass, his voice filled with emotion as he addressed the crowd. "To my parents, who taught me that true strength comes from standing together. This building, this community, it's all because of you. You gave us a home that can never be taken away, a legacy of unity and resilience, and I promise to honor that legacy and continue the work you started. As the crowd raised their glasses, Marcus and Lisa looked around, seeing the impact of their journey reflected in every face. They felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for each other, for their children, and for the community they had built. A legacy of unity. In the years that followed, the Johnsons' building became more than just a home. It became a movement. Marcus and Lisa's journey from facing eviction to creating a national initiative had changed lives, inspired others, and left a lasting imprint on the fabric of their community. Their story spread, reminding people everywhere that real change was possible when individuals stood together. They had shown that even the smallest acts of unity could ripple outward, transforming lives, neighborhoods, and cities. In the end, the Johnsons' legacy was not just in the brick and mortar of their building, but in the hearts and minds of those they had inspired. And as long as people remembered their journey, the spirit of unity would endure, lighting a path for generations to come. Let me know if you have any final touches in mind, or if you'd like this tailored further. The story has reached its powerful, lasting conclusion. The ripple effect. Decades passed, and the Johnsons' story became a legend in the neighborhood. What Marcus and Lisa had started as a fight for their home had transformed into a movement that changed the lives of countless people. The Unity Initiative was now a national organization with chapters across the country, each dedicated to empowering tenants, fostering sustainable housing, and building communities grounded in support and resilience. The Johnsons had watched their children, Malcolm and Jasmine, grow into leaders of the movement. Malcolm had become the organization's executive director, bringing fresh energy and innovative ideas to the Unity Initiative. Jasmine, always passionate about the arts and storytelling, founded the Unity Center for Creative Voices, a space within the Johnsons' building dedicated to community-driven art and social change through creative expression. Together, Malcolm and Jasmine continued to honor their parents' legacy, expanding the initiative's reach to new cities and neighborhoods every year. As Marcus and Lisa entered their twilight years, they felt a deep sense of peace. They had poured their lives into building something greater than themselves, and the fruits of their labor were evident in every smiling face, every restored building, and every tenant who now had the confidence to stand up for their rights. They knew that the work would continue long after they were gone, carried forward by the next generation. One afternoon, as they sat in the community room that had been the heart of their journey, they watched young families chatting, children playing, and neighbors catching up. This space, which had once been a place of refuge, had become a hub of joy and creativity, and it reminded them just how powerful a united community could be. The national legacy of unity. As the Unity Initiative's influence grew, its impact extended far beyond individual buildings and communities. The initiative became a model for urban development, showing that sustainable, community-driven approaches to housing could thrive in any city. Policies inspired by the initiative were adopted in states across the country, providing protections for tenants and promoting community ownership. Malcolm led a campaign to introduce Unity communities in low-income neighborhoods nationwide. These communities were designed with the principles of the initiative, offering affordable housing, community spaces, and resources for personal and professional growth. Each Unity community was equipped with solar panels, green spaces, and even cooperative businesses where tenants could work and gain ownership stakes. Under Malcolm's leadership, the initiative partnered with local governments and businesses to build these communities, providing a sustainable solution to the housing crisis. Unity communities quickly became renowned for their strong, interconnected neighborhoods. Each community held regular gatherings, workshops, and cultural events, creating an atmosphere of celebration and shared purpose. People traveled from across the country to visit the original Johnson building, now a historical landmark, where tours and exhibitions showcased the remarkable journey of the Johnsons and their neighbors. Jasmine's Unity Center for Creative Voices also expanded its reach, creating traveling exhibitions that shared the stories of resilience, creativity, and unity that had emerged from the initiative. Through paintings, murals, performances, and films, these exhibitions celebrated the lives of the people the initiative had touched and served as a testament to the strength of community. A final farewell. One winter evening, as the Johnsons gathered for their annual community celebration, Marcus and Lisa took a moment to address the crowd. Their hair had grayed, and their voices had softened with age, but their eyes shone with the same spark that had ignited the initiative so many years ago. Marcus cleared his throat, his voice filled with emotion. All those years ago, we stood together against forces much larger than ourselves. We didn't know then where this journey would take us, but we knew we couldn't back down. Together, we built something strong, something that would last. We created a home, not just for our family, but for everyone who needed one. Lisa took his hand, smiling at the faces that looked back at her with admiration and love. You have all become our family, and we are so grateful for each and every one of you. The Unity Initiative is more than just buildings and programs. It's people, it's love, it's resilience. As we step back and pass the torch to Malcolm and Jasmine, we know that you'll continue this work with the same heart and determination. The crowd rose in a standing ovation, applause echoing through the room. Neighbors, friends, and family members came forward, sharing stories of how the Johnsons had touched their lives, how they had found hope and strength within the walls of the building. As the celebration drew to a close, Jasmine and Malcolm took their parents' hands, leading them to a plaque newly installed in the lobby. The plaque bore an inscription that read, "In honor of Marcus and Lisa Johnson, whose courage, compassion, and vision transformed lives and built a legacy of unity, strength, and hope. May the impact of their journey continue to inspire generations." Marcus and Lisa's hearts swelled with pride as they read the words, knowing they had indeed left a lasting mark on the world. Generations of change. Years after Marcus and Lisa passed on, the Unity Initiative continued to flourish, adapting to the evolving challenges of the modern world. Malcolm and Jasmine had expanded the initiative's mission, introducing mentorship programs, mental health resources, and educational scholarships for children growing up in Unity communities. Each year, on the anniversary of the building's purchase, the community gathered to honor the Johnsons and their remarkable journey. Neighbors shared stories, young people performed songs and plays inspired by the initiative's values, and families from across the country came to pay their respects. Malcolm and Jasmine had children of their own, and as they grew, they, too, became involved in the initiative. The Johnson grandchildren proudly shared stories of their grandparents' bravery and perseverance, instilling in them the importance of unity and community. By the time they reached adulthood, the Johnson grandchildren were leading their own projects within the initiative, ensuring that the legacy of Marcus and Lisa would continue for many more generations. In a touching tradition, every new tenant of a Unity community received a small booklet that told the story of Marcus and Lisa Johnson. It was a reminder of where it all began, a testament to the power of a single act of courage and the ripple effect it could create. The booklets bore the words Marcus had once said to Lisa, "True strength comes from standing together. What we build here will last long after we're gone." The Johnson story inspired people across the world to believe in the possibility of change. Their legacy endured not just in the buildings and communities they had created, but in the hearts of everyone they had touched. The Unity Initiative had become a movement, a source of hope for countless people seeking justice, equality, and a place to call home. The legacy lives on. One spring morning, as the city skyline glowed under the early sun, Malcolm stood on the rooftop garden of the original Johnson building. The garden had grown into a lush oasis, filled with blooming flowers, vibrant vegetables, and trees planted in memory of those who had been part of the journey. Standing there, he felt the presence of his parents, their spirit woven into the very soil beneath his feet. He was joined by his own children, who gazed at the city with the same awe and hope that had driven Marcus and Lisa all those years ago. "This is where it all began," Malcolm said softly, pointing out the landmarks that dotted the landscape, places touched by the Unity Initiative. "And it's up to us to keep it going, to make sure that what your grandparents started will continue to change lives." His daughter, now a teenager with the same fiery determination that had defined her grandmother, nodded. "We will, Dad. We'll make them proud." And as the next generation took in the view, a sense of purpose filled their hearts. The Unity Initiative was no longer just a mission. It was their family's legacy, a story they would carry forward with pride and dedication. Through the years, the Johnsons' building remained a symbol of hope, a reminder that real change was possible when people stood together. Marcus and Lisa's legacy had transcended time, a testament to the enduring power of unity, resilience, and love. And as long as their story was told, the spirit of the Unity Initiative would live on, lighting a path for future generations to follow. With this, the Johnson story reaches its eternal impact, a legacy woven into the lives of every generation that follows, continuing to inspire unity and hope. Let me know if there's anything more you'd like to add or modify.